Right, go when ready.
3, 2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to this week's Sweet and Salty Movie Review podcast. This week, I am Sweet.
And I am Salty.
How you doing, Salty? Good to see you,
Oh,
my friend.
I'm very, very well. How are you this week?
I'm not too bad at all, thank you. And what a week we've had so far.
Has been an interesting week. I've just realised your background as well has flipped, so Civil War is backwards.
Now that's
Don't worry
really
about it.
interesting because
Yeah.
I'm looking at it and it's correct for me,
Mm.
and I flipped it because it was reverse. So
I'm looking at it and it is definitely the wrong way around. So we definitely don't read right to left. But it's not
well,
not a problem. Not a problem. Not a problem at all.
I may have to take a photo to show you that on my screen it is the right way round.
It's
and I,
Skype.
I
No one
pur-
uses Skype. Why are we using Skype?
and I purposely went into all the other backgrounds I've got and flipped them so it looked the right way. So obviously, I bug it up. I bug it up, everyone.
Not to worry. Right. What are we doing this week, Tom? What are we doing?
So we're going to give everyone a quick intro to the movie we saw last night, Civil War. We're going to go into a full in-depth review on last week's Monkey Man. You're going to give us a 5 minutes overview of Kung Fu Panda 4, and I'll give you a 5 minutes overview on the Amazon Prime series Fallout. So, are you ready to rock and roll, lock in, get set? Let's do this.
Maybe just grab a coffee. Okay.
And and
Oh,
also,
mm, mm.
we've already booked our tickets for next week's movie, The Book of Clarence. So
Yes.
I'm quite looking forward to that. So after last night's film, we definitely need a comedy. So yeah, next week, The Book of Clarence.
Right. So let's kick off then. Civil War. So this is the film about a journey across a dystopian future America following a team of military embedded journalists as they race against time to reach DC before rebel factions descend upon the White House. I can't make up my mind as to whether this is actually a fictional story, documentary, or mockumentary. But it is definitely a very well put together film, a fantastic cast, and a rather terrifying premise based upon current politics. And I think it's well worth a watch, especially if you're from the States, because it might just, help give you some perspective as to what happens with all when you live in a country full of mad people and guns. Um, yeah, I think it's. I'm not going to say much more because it's actually quite. What the trailer gives away and what actually happens in the film are a little bit. I feel like the trailer's trying to lead you one way and the film leads you another, but it's a fascinating movie, really well done, really well put together. Credit all round to the cast. Kirsten Dunst's fantastic in this. Kaylee Spaney is really, really good. Wagner Moore, I've not seen him before, but he's brilliant. Nick Offerman is back doing his best. The comedians always play the sort of straight characters really well, I find, in these sorts of films, and he's back as the president. There's a fantastic cast of people. Go and watch it. Really, really good. I think the only thing we sort of commented on before we started recording is it's not really a date night movie. It's one of those ones that leaves you feeling rather thoughtful. Very well done, but not all the fun that you'd expect of a date night movie. What are your thoughts, Tom?
Um, Well, I think you summed it up quite nicely. One, it's unless you are a couple that love political debates, you will love this movie, and it is very much a date night movie for
So
political couples.
I'll
How
just interject then. Basically, what you're saying is this is ideal for any conservative who wants to take out his adult worker rent boy for the weekend, perhaps. Yeah, probably just a bit of a UK
I'm
centric
not,
joke, that one.
yeah,
So,
I'm not insinuating anything like that. This this is a very thought-provoking, and I know we're going into this movie in a lot more detail next week.
yeah,
So it's produced by A24. This is their biggest budget movie to date. It is a very thought-provoking, intense movie. And I have to say, there was a couple of bits where I visibly jumped because of what actually happened in the movie. And you sit there as we're recording this from the UK, and our civil liberties are very free. We can quite openly do things, and in theory, our politicians
Oh, we've lost Tom
aren't.
for a second. Hold on a minute.
This
Tom's
is where
lost
you
his.
politics to the extreme.
You're gonna have to repeat that last 30 seconds because you phased out a little bit. Your internet
Oh, did
connection
I?
decided it didn't want to work. It's all right. I covered
Oh,
for you.
okay.
Yeah. You were saying about something about local UK politics.
Yeah, so as I was saying, so in this country we have very good civil liberties, freedom, and in theory, our politicians are, if compared to some countries, pretty squeaky clean. However, that is a sweeping brush statement. This movie is very much about the extreme, and what happens when politicians overstep the power, what happens when they then force through a third term and then they start dividing the country. This is, as I say, thought provoking, deeply moving, well worth a watch. And as I say, we'll talk about this a lot more next week.
Yeah, definitely go and see it. Go and see it. A very, very good film. Right. So that moves us on to Monkey Man. The answer to the question, what would happen if you tried to make an 80s action movie today in India? And it answers it in spectacular fashion. So the synopsis for this one is: a young man ekes out a meager living in an underground fight club where, night after night, wearing a gorilla mask, he's beaten bloody by more popular fighters for cash. After years of suppressed rage, he discovers a way to infiltrate the enclave of the city's sinister elite. As his childhood trauma boils over, his mysteriously scarred hands unleash an explosive campaign of retribution to settle the score with the men who took everything from him. Bum, bum, bum. I mean, that
Exactly.
could literally be starring Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jackie Chan. You just, yeah, that film fits nicely in with the 80s. Um, what were you? So what did you think of Monkey Man, Tom?
I loved it. I have to say, I was really looking forward to watching a really good action movie. Um, it to me, Dev Patel, he has taken elements of John Wick, he's taken elements of Taken, he's taken elements of a film called Unleashed, which is a very underrated Bob Hoskins film, and mished it all together, added the Bollywood theme to it. This is set in India. And you and I, as I've said last week, you and I have been to India on multiple occasions, and it brought back India to life for me. You've got the extreme poverty, you've got the extreme wealth, and you've got everyone in between. And it is violent. It's rated 18. It's a 2 hour movie. Pretty much from the opening scene, it is adrenaline, it is action, it adds in the theatrical, the Bollywood, the dancing, the color, the lights, even like down to like the alleyways and where people, you can see them sleeping on the pavements. You can visually, I say visually, you can imagine the smells that are coming up from the city into everyone's sort of pores and the way they live. Um, it's based on revenge, it's action, it's the super rich versus the super poor. Revenge, very much about how the political parties, along with the politically rich, wanted to take over people's land, kick people out of properties, and burn properties down and move people on. So this is an area of land I want. I'm having it. You're all being moved out. And you watch this story with flashbacks to his childhood to see how he's then plotting his revenge on the people that killed his mother, and burned the rest of the village. And from the get go, it's just non-stop action. And you're for me, I'm sitting there rooting on this guy, thinking, "Come on, you're gonna do this." And he to earn money, he works in an underground fight club. He wears the monkey mask because there is a one of the gods. There are many gods in India. I love the concept. You've got all these different types of gods, and he takes on the role of Monkey Man, but he always loses his fights. But he does it just to win the money, to then start getting back into the circle of people he wants to be around to enable him to carry out his revenge. I really enjoyed it. I think, yes, it's rated 18. Yes, there's a lot of violence. Um, Not much swearing. Definitely drug use. Definitely a lot of reference or visual references to brothels, and you see like Indian girls looking after Indian men. And it just was visually stunning. I would quite happily watch this again and again. Now, interestingly, what else I found out was it was originally funded by Netflix, but Netflix actually dropped it. So the budget was only 10 million. So if we refer back to Civil War, this budget for Civil War was 50 million. And we're seeing this with Far Eastern Asian movies. The budgets are far cheaper, but they are producing far superior films to Hollywood at this moment in time. Um, and because they were dropped by Netflix and the budgets were cut, elements of this film were filmed on GoPros and iPhones. And only now do I sit there and think, well, what element was on a GoPro? What element was on an iPhone? And I don't think I could distinguish between where they're using the 4K cameras, the Sony 4K cameras, compared to the iPhones and the GoPros. It was that well edited, stroke put together. So for me, great movie, great cast, lots of action. If you it's not a thinking man's film. It's you go there, it does what it says on the tin. Action fruit from the moment it starts to the moment it ends, and I really enjoyed it.
It certainly is. It's pretty high octane. You're right. It does a fantastic job of capturing the kind of chaotic order of somewhere like Delhi, where I mean, you can go out onto the road in Delhi. There's 3 lanes of traffic by the lines in the road. The
Yeah,
road's
the
designed to
road
have 3 lanes
markings,
of
three
traffic,
lines.
but there's 5 rows of cars, and there's rickshaws and then bicycles and motorcycles all trying to get around, and somehow they don't knock each other off. It's amazing.
and
I Go
and
on.
you'll have one lane of traffic coming towards you on the side of the road where everything's going the other way as well.
Yeah, you often get cars cutting through, and yeah, it's absolute madness. I once heard a story from a friend of mine who's a pilot that uh, the Indian Air Force are particularly gifted at dogfighting because of their spatial awareness. Basically, if you're a rickshaw driver, you're probably a gifted fighter pilot as well if you can train them up, because they're just aware without ever looking about whatever the hell is around them at any given time. And I've driven rickshaws. The mirrors on a rickshaw are designed more to be able to see into the back of the rickshaw rather than what's coming up the sides of it. And while I'm probably a little taller than most people in Asia, I'm probably a bit taller on average. I sit in a rickshaw. There is like there's a mirror across the whole front of it, which allows you to sort of see side to the sides and behind you as well. You can't really see anything but the people in the rickshaw behind you. But because of how tall I am, what I can actually see is the road surface either side of me and the bottom half of my body. That's what I'm able to see. So these things are incredibly difficult to. They're not hard to drive, but they are incredibly difficult to figure out where you are anywhere in the world. So yeah, if you're looking for talented fighter pilots, Indian rickshaw drivers definitely the people to go for. I do contradict a few points though. I do not think that this film's DNA lies in things like John Wick or Taken. I mean, there's no Taken person in it, although I can see where the idea, especially some of the camera tricks they use, because obviously, thinking back, if they were using GoPros and iPhones, I can see why certain tricks were done with their cameras, where camera angles changed a lot, or they were being filmed through glass, like you're looking at it, the camera's positioned behind like a glass. So you see things moving around in the background, or you're seeing things in the mirror because those shots then allow the less focused, the more grainy images for you to get away with things like that. But I feel like the DNA of this film is more in things like Game of Death, Kickboxer, Cop Story. I feel like there's Enter the Dragon sort of in here.
There was
Absolute
also
Without Leave or AWOL.
there was also the reference to James Bond, whether it was like Octopussy or one of the older ones,
with
when
all
you
the with all the guys came in wearing those outfits and they all turned into ninjas. It's just like that moment in a James Bond film. They open the door and it's like there's a whole bunch of ninjas all training, and it's like
correct.
later on they all arrive. They descend and there's loads of chaos as they take care of all
It's like
the
when the lift
Acme bad guys.
when the lift doors open, there was like 30 baddies all in there ready to come out and fight.
Yeah,
Um,
and then they
yeah,
come running in from the side. It's like there you go.
and the reason I referenced Taken was the two girls in Taken were kidnapped to be sold off into the sex ring,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then you had the women who were effectively a catalogue of women that
Mm.
the rich guests could choose from that would be their entertainment for the night.
Yeah,
So that was my reference to
I get,
Taken.
and I completely get why you're looking that way, but I think personally that Taken and John Wick were inspired by some of the films that this thing has really adopted in its DNA. I was watching. I mean, even the way the film is broken down, you meet your hero, yeah, young, hard done by chap. He then, he's on a revenge story. It's a classic 80s kind of narrative. He
Mhm.
then comes up against the guy he's taking revenge from and then gets his ass handed to him because he's not ready. He's not there. He's no, there's something. He needs some master or something to enter stage left. And at this point, also the love interest kind of comes in as well.
Correct.
And honestly, if you go back and watch Kickboxer, A will enter any of those old movies, you'll see this is exactly how they're structured. And then you have the training session, and where he hones his skills, and all of a sudden he turns into a lean fighter in like a 5 minute montage. It used to be 80s music. In this one, it's more of an Indian derived tune. And then he goes back for revenge and ultimately beats all the bad guys. And even the way the last bit's structured, where he goes up the building, is very much like an 80s video game where you start on the bottom level and then you work your way up, which is what Game of Death did. Game of Death was a Bruce Lee movie that was made after he'd passed away. It was only partially made with him, and I think they had to get a stand in. But in that, he starts off on the bottom level of this building and he slowly works his way up and has to keep fighting different masters as he goes up the building. And there was a bit of a hint of that in the way that this worked, where he went, into the kitchen, then into the
Nightclub bit.
yeah, into the nightclub bit, then into the exclusive area, then all the way to the top where the last boss is.
Yeah.
And also there was that Bruce Lee story, the enter the I think it was called Dragon, back in the 90s. And it had this fantastic scene that apparently happened in Bruce Lee's real life, where he got into a fight with a bunch of kitchen workers. And I just looked at that scene, and I went back and had a look at that film, and I thought there's a lot of similarity here. So I think I think Dev Patel is a big action junkie, because he's the director here. So I would
Mm.
say that I get why. I would say it was a bit of a misdirection to say it's like John Wick, because John Wick's action is very authentic, like this is, but John Wick's action is a mix of martial arts and gunplay. There's very little gunplay in this film, almost none. This is very much closer to those old 80s actions movies where you've got your hero and he's basically going fist to fist with this guy. He's overcoming all the odds, using only his skills alone. But I mean, that's just opinion, really, I suppose, more than anything else. And I would imagine that some people will agree with you on that one, Tom, and some people will agree with me. It's really nothing else other than that. I think we're both driving, though, at the same point. This is a really fantastic film. It deserves to do absolutely brilliantly and make oodles of money so that we can get a Monkey Man 2.
Yep, I agree.
All right.
And
Enter
already,
enter the Dragon Boss or
well,
something, you know.
so with a budget of 10 million, they've already taken 24.2 million
Yeah.
at the
And
box
that's
office.
that's another good point you made as well, because the Japanese Godzilla movie was what, 28-30 million dollars,
Yeah.
and had some amazing special effects and won an Oscar for the special effects. And it just goes to show, you do not, I mean, it's like anything else in the Western world. It's massively overblown because there's a massive amount of profiteering being made, multiple companies with anything in the Western world. If you want to make a CGI of Godzilla running around with King Kong, I reckon there's probably 15 different companies involved in that, and every single one of them's got to make a profit. And that's why your costs are so high. Whereas if you have one company doing all the work, you remember when it used to just be one company like 20, 30
Mm.
years ago, you'd get amazing special effects. Like, tell me Jurassic Park or Terminator 2 special effects are any worse or better than the stuff that we get today. The framing might be a bit tidier when they do it properly. The resolution might be a bit higher today. But come on, I mean, what they were doing with silicon graphics kind of workstations back then is almost on par with what we're doing with modern computers today. So yeah, I think it's just amazing what they've done with $10 million, and people are going to start investing in these sorts of movies more and more, because they're you stick $5 million of your money into a movie because you want a return. It's an investment job, basically.
Mm.
But if that movie's going to make 50-60 million dollars back, you're going to put money into it. And I can just see more and more stuff like this. And I'm like, all power to it. I think it's a fantastic idea, and it'll bring some much needed change to the cinema. Because while I don't mind a Marvel movie, it does get to the point where it's like every week there's a new one. Like,
Yeah.
okay, fair enough.
So
Um,
what are you going to score this?
Ooh, I'm going to give this a 4.2 out of 5.
Ooh, I'm scoring it 4.4.
Ooh, you're going higher than me, are you?
I'm going higher. This was a great movie. I
I
really
t-
enjoyed it.
do you know what? The only thing I didn't enjoy about this was it has a Kill Bill Volume 2-esque ending to it. I was really hoping, because he beats it's like there's two final bosses really in this movie,
Yeah.
and he beats the first final boss. He gets his ass handed to him by him earlier in the movie, and then he comes back and then he ends his ass to him. So it's not like there's any in these fights. It goes from he gets beaten bloody to it's kind of easy. He outdoes this final boss quite well. So I was expecting something really intense and interesting for the final fight, and it's a bit like Kill Bill Volume 2, where it's all and it's over.
Over in
It's going, oh no,
seconds.
come on,
Yeah.
don't end it that way. And that was the only reason why I didn't go higher on the score, because I just didn't think the ending was quite there. However, it is, just a small fly in what is otherwise a fine jar of ointment.
Brilliant. So give me 5
4.2 and
minutes.
4.4.
Yeah, give me a 5 minutes very quick insight into why I should go and see Kung Fu Panda 4.
Why should you go and see Kung Fu Panda 4? I'll tell you why you should go and see Kung Fu Panda 4, because it's fun. That's it. It's just fun. You know what's going to happen because it's happened 4 times already. There's a slight change to the movie's format. I'll give you the synopsis. Poe must train a new warrior when he's chosen to become the spiritual leader of the Valley of Peace. However, when a powerful shape-shifting sorcerer sets her eyes on his staff of wisdom, he suddenly realizes he's going to need some help. Teaming up with a quick-witted Cossack fox, Poe soon discovers that heroes can be found in the most unexpected places. Which, if you remember first Kung Fu Panda, he was the unexpected place where they found the Dragon Warrior. And unless you kept up with things, essentially you got the Staff of Wisdom in the last movie from the wise old turtle guy who had died in the first movie. It's all a bit confusing. It doesn't matter, because this is one of those really great kids movies that's designed for adults and kids. You can go to the cinema with your 2 children or your 1 child or whatever. They'll have fun because it's got those silly slapstick moments everyone loves, and then there's some really great adult humor thrown in there, just sort of in the background, right? And I really love the idea that Poe has two fathers in this, and it never specifically says they're in a relationship, but they are running a restaurant together. and they do appear to be out arguing like a married couple sometimes. I love the fact it's just it's just that I love that. That's brilliant. Yeah, and I mean, Dustin Hoffman comes back. He has a few lines in it as the little panda thing, raccoon thing. Most of the original characters aren't in this though. So, because you remember you had like Jackie Chan and a bunch of other. I can't remember the lady's name. She
Wasn't Owen
was,
Wilson in it?
I think so. What was the late Angelina Jolie was in it as Tigress. None of them are in it. They're introducing some new characters in this one. So I won't give any more away than that really because it's just a fun movie. And it doesn't well, actually it doesn't really matter. It's kind of a handing over of the torch movie because like if you from the synopsis you can sort of see what Poe's actually doing is he has to train his replacement. And the fox is, the little fox which is played by Aquafina. Aquafina. She plays the fox. So you remember the lady from you remember the Marvel movie with the martial arts, really good one that had all the martial arts in it, and the 12 rings.
Yes. Yep.
She was his sidekick, the mate that came along. She was the comedian, the funny
Right.
sidekick. She's really, really fantastic in this. Really great. Yeah. Bryan Cranston's back as Lee Shan. They've got like the original bad guy from the first one. He makes an appearance. It's all very, very good. Yeah, definitely worth a watch. Just
Cool.
great fun. This is actually, I would say, a good date night movie. It's just funny. All right, it's really relaxed, and it doesn't matter, honestly.
Brilliant.
It's
Okay.
a bit like the Despicable Me movies are becoming. Everyone can laugh at them. It's not really
Yeah.
just a kids movie anymore, and I'll be more than happy to go and review that one as well. Yeah, so I would give Kung Fu Panda a solid 3 out of 5. Like
Good
it's
score.
not doing,
Good
yeah,
score.
it deserves a 3. It's not groundbreaking, but what it does really, really well. It's like if you go to a really good, it's like that local fish and chip shop that does the best fish and chips around. You always go there because they've got your favorite fish and chips and they do it really, really well. But it's not, a 5-star Michelin star restaurant.
Yeah.
So yeah, three
Totally
out
get
of
it.
five.
Brilliant.
So go on in. Let's talk about Fallout. We don't do a lot of TV on this show, but Fallout I think was originally going to become a movie, so I'll allow it.
Okay. Well, look, well, you know definitely, and I think some of the listeners know. I'm not great with TV series. I struggle with TV series. I get bored after about the second episode where it's like it follows the same theme, or it's like if it's a police detective or a medical drama, case comes in, kid's ill, doctor solves the problem, does various tests, and then the kid goes home absolutely fine. So I'm not a big gamer, so I've never played the game Fallout. So I liked watching Silo on Apple TV. Fallout is based on a similar principle. There's been a nuclear war. There's a number of silo Fallout bunkers, and the world is going to repopulate based on the people that are in the bunkers. And the concept is they've been underground for 200 years. So it starts off in the year 2077. So we're 40 years or 50 years in the future, which I can't get my head round because all the cars they're driving are like 1950s Cadillacs, but they're obviously all converted to be electric or they're running on nuclear power. But all the adverts are like 1950 styles. All the buildings and the furniture's 1950s, but set in 2077. So
So
whether it's like an alternative
yeah, it
timeline or an
is.
alternative universe, couldn't quite get
So
that, and that doesn't come across in the
okay,
the build up to
just
how this all.
to settle your confusion, it is an alternative Cold War reality. So instead of nuclear power being, because it's terrifying bombs, everyone's scared of it. It's more accepted worldwide. So they put it in cars, everything's electric, and then they
Right.
develop like robots that run off the electricity. So it's like an alternative timeline. But the events that lead to them going into the vault and then waking up in 2077 actually happened in the 1950s, which is why it,
Right.
instead of it being, instead of
So,
you thinking, oh, why is it only 20 years? It's actually more like 100.
well, so the film is set in 2077, but as if it's 1950, and they wake up in 2277.
Oh, that's interesting.
All right, so they've had 200 years of living underground in various bunkers, and I think there's like 33 bunkers. The concept of the movie or the TV show is each silo, they it was the most profitable company in the world that built the bunkers, and the way they sold the bunkers were, one of the bunkers was just run by scientists, so they were going to be the brightest and best people in the world. Trouble is they started doing genetic experiments, and you then get like humans with one eye, and you get people crossed with different animals, so you get all these mutants. Other silos were sold off to other businesses to do other medical testing or scientific experiments. So effectively, a lot of the silos have broken down or gone wrong. And what happens is each silo is linked with two others. So they're in like a triple compound. And the way it is if you want to get married and reproduce, you marry someone from one of the other compounds. And so this girl, this young lady, she's going to get married, and she's living in compound 32, and her husband's going to come from compound 33. When they open the doors, all these people come in from 33, but what you don't realize is everyone from 33 has died, and these are raiders from the surface. And
Yeah, yeah.
and that's just the first episode. And then it's every episode is based on how this girl ends up on the
Mm,
surface, and she's trying to track down her dad, and she comes across a ghoul, which actually is a reference to one of the cowboys from the original
yeah.
2077. I really enjoyed it, and to me it felt a bit like a comedy, whereas Silo on Apple TV was quite serious. This felt quite comical. And I got to the end of episode 8 and I really enjoyed it. But I also like the concept where they had two trailers, which were like cartoons selling you the concept of moving into the underground bunker. So
Mm.
it's definitely one worth watching, definitely one worth sticking to the end. I quite like the Titan robots and how you can become a knight to serve in the robots. Um, I love the dog, the dogs that were trained to
Yeah.
look after people. So I'm going to give this a 3.8 out of 5. Well worth a watch, definitely. Great,
So
enjoyable series.
yeah, so my apologies. I was wrong. It is, yeah, the games are set in 21st, 22nd, 23rd centuries. It's influenced by post-war culture of 1950, so post-Second World War culture of 1950, which is why it looks that way. But it is actually 2077, so I've just learned something new there. Because I've only ever played Fallout 4, and so I don't give away the overall idea behind the series, but Fallout 4's story starts with you rushing off to the bunker as nuclear war goes off, and you and your wife and your baby child go into these
Sleep pods.
cocoons.
Yep.
Yep, and then you wake up seeing someone dragging your wife and baby out of one pod, and then they kill your wife, run off with the baby, and then your pod gets reactivated, and then you wake up again. And all the way through the game, you're trying to find the baby. And what it turns out is that actually another 70 years have passed between the baby being kidnapped and you waking up, and the baby turns out to be this old guy who you find at the very end of the game. So I can kind of see those sorts of because the TV series will take its lead from Fallout, and Fallout 4 was, I think, the most popular Fallout of the lot of them. Um, yeah, so I would say it sounds to me like it would take a sort of comedy kind of element as well. I mean, there was in the game there was a group of people you help out, and they call themselves the Minutemen.
Okay.
And the Minutemen basically form, they're like a militia trying to draw back some of the old American ways. But of course, Minutemen are the term used for the ballistic missiles that they have across America. You know, the siloed missiles are not the
Yeah.
ones that they drop from planes, or they've got the nuclear triad, which is submersible missiles, plane dropped missiles or launched missiles, and then the ICBMs. And the ICBMs are nicknamed Minutemen. And there's lots of little things like that in the game, which really made the game exceptional. It was an award-winning game that they sold for years and years afterwards. I think it originally came out in 2015, but it was a very wide-selling game. It might have been Fallout 3 that was a big one. Okay. Yeah. So I don't get much time to watch TV, but I'll try. I'll add it to the list of TV series. I do slowly get around to them. So I shall try and find some time for that. Right. So let's wrap it up then, Tom. Next week we are going to go and see the Book of Clarence. So we'll give you an overview of that. Otherwise, Tom, it's that time again.
It is. And I want to say hello to one of our newest listeners. So, Russell, great meeting you, speaking to you this week for the first time. Love the fact that you are into movies just as much as we are. I know you've already said you've signed up to our podcast and you're going to be listening to us waffle on tomorrow while you're traveling down to Brighton. So have a safe journey. Enjoy us two waffling on about movies as always. If you want to be a guest speaker, feel free. Or if there's any movies, just ping me. Let me know what you want to see. So on that note, thank you, everyone. Take care. Good night. Stay safe. And as always, sleep tight. Russell.
On the one hand,
Another Russell.
you're gonna have to make a point of which Russell you're talking about.
I know. I've just realised that.
On the one hand, I mean, you can't knock the service that we offer. Every single time you find a new listener, you mention them and you welcome them, etc. It's just on the business side of this podcast, Tom. We need quite a lot of listeners. And I'm not sure that the number we really need to grow by on a week by week basis at the moment. You could welcome them all individually. However, if you're only welcoming one every week, we're gonna grow very slowly. Oh dear. Right, that's it. We'll be back next week. Until then, take care, everyone. Goodbye.